It's in the Bones, poet Megha Rao in conversation with senior journalist Ms. Kaveri Bamzai. So please welcome them on stage with a round of applause as I take this time to introduce Ms. Megha Rao, a poet from Kerala. Her work has been featured in Poetry Magazine, Outlook, BBC Radio, Rolling Stone, Harper's Bazaar, Penguin, Random House India. Her poetry podcast, Poems to Calm Down To, trended #1 on Spotify India and stayed on the top podcast charts for 2 years. She is represented by the leading North American literary management company, Transatlantic Agency, and her new novel, Our Bones in Your Throat, is out now with Simon and Schuster. So let's make some noise for the ladies as we welcome them on stage for this session.
So Megha, I've seen you and heard you perform, and of course, I'm very greedy about the fact that you have to perform your poems. But I want to start off by talking about the switch you've made recently from poetry to prose. What was that like, your new work?
I think that, so much of poetry is about vulnerability, getting very, very close to your emotions, very raw emotions. But I think I had the space to experiment a little when it came to prose, to kind of take a step back. And, with prose, with writing fiction, there's always a small little curtain, unlike poetry, where you have to show up in front of everyone with all your feelings. Yeah. So, in a way, it felt the same, but at the same time, it also felt like there were a lot of other things I could play with. I could have my characters, and I felt myself. It almost felt like raising children. I don't know what that's like, but you start out.
It's very tough.
I'm sure, but yeah, I'm sure. But I've seen how my parents have raised us, and you see how parents sometimes project their principles onto you, their teachings, their religious views, all of that. But then when children grow up into whoever they want to be, their personalities change, their principles change. And that's kind of how I felt about the characters as well. After a point, you kind of lose your control over them, and they become their own people. And it feels very hard to project yourself onto them. Versus with poetry, it's always like a mirror. You see yourself all the time. Every time I pick a poem that I wrote, I always see myself in it. And sometimes you feel like hiding as well. So I think with prose, I can read my prose. Yeah. But with poetry, it's always hard because when I read my poetry, again, I feel very vulnerable. And that's very overwhelming sometimes.
And also, you also evolve as a person. So some of your poetry may seem to you as if it was written by a stranger, right? Or does it seem that way?
Yeah, I've been writing since I was 6, and I still have some of the comic books I made when I was a little girl. And I read that, and I find myself... In fact, because I also paint and draw, I have these fake notes, currency, that I made when I was 10 years old. So it literally looks like an Indian rupee, but obviously it's fake. And comic books, and just very random, creative things. I see that, and I don't feel like, I don't look at it and feel bad about it, of course. I just feel like, okay, I've outgrown this, but it's still quite funny to go back and read what you've written. Sure, if I look at the poems that I wrote 3 years ago, I feel...
Sad? Do you feel who was that person?
I do. I feel like identity is so complex, and you're constantly evolving. And so many of your personal values also change. Your views change. So I do feel... I think that question is always there, who is that? But then also... It doesn't have to be a year back. Some days you wake up and you feel like a part of you has changed because, I mean, anything, the environment, the things you read, everything changes you. And sometimes you evolve, sometimes you don't, but Yeah, I mean, I do often feel like I can't recognize some parts of me from years ago. But it always feels nice to return to that. Almost feels like returning to an old friend.
I was thinking in particular, you can call me Army, you know. Uh, it struck me as being something that you wrote at a very specific time is and
Yeah.
best friends.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
when you're talking about more than just lovers and a romantic relationship, you know, the idea of having best friends. And I was wondering, do you still have that sentiment or have you outgrown it? What is that?
I think that whatever I wrote at that age, I
It is not very old, I can, I imagine.
no, I think it must be 2 or 3 years back. But I know that when I wrote You Can Call Me Army, it was focused more on changing identity as well as a woman. I still feel that. I feel that sometimes in public spaces and in private spaces, everywhere we show up as different people. Yeah. And because there was already a bit of limelight when I was much younger, it it feels a bit confusing because those are your growing years and those are the years you're forming your identity. And there's a lot of noise outside and there's especially in this age of social media, right? You're always presenting a very specific version of yourself. And when you're growing in an environment like that, it's very easy to be, easy to hide some parts of you that you feel ashamed of, but at the same time present the parts of you that you really like. And then you end up completely throwing away those parts which are important too.
Is that something you'd like to recite here, or is there something else that you have in mind?
Yeah, so I wrote a poem very recently about, I think a year ago, I was very suffocated by, how sometimes life becomes really fast and there's just so much pressure to deliver, to show up. And I was reading.
Especially on social media.
Yeah, and in general, like.
How many followers do you have?
I have, I don't know, I think maybe around 50, 60,000.
That's a lot.
But I was reading this book called How to Do Nothing, Beating the Attention Economy. And the author used a very specific word called JOMO, which means the joy of missing out. I know everyone's heard of FOMO, and we often feel that. We feel that when we don't get invited to a party, or maybe all our friends are at a lit fest, but then we just fall sick and we can't show up. Anything, we feel FOMO. But this term, JOMO, really caught my attention, and so I wrote a poem about just slowing down. And yeah, this one's called Pauses, so I think I'll just perform it. When I was younger, I wanted things. I still do. I dream about having wings. Sometimes I'm aeroplanes and tours and fancy stages, moving through crowds, windows down as the adrenaline rages. The only beautiful thing I knew was living fast, working so hard that one day I would get to the top at last. You see, they put you in schools and teach you words like first and topper and competition and winner and loser. That's the worst. And suddenly you're in this loop, running and running and running until you hit a wall and have a terrible, terrible fall. They put you in cubicles and suits and upgrade you, but everyone knows that corner office is meant only for a few. And even if you quit, the new place you go to loses its shine. Before you know it, you're working all the way till 9. So what if you do finally land your dream job? One day, you find yourself holding back a confused sob because all you ever do, even with the things you love, is race and race and race until your feet can't keep up with the pace. Nobody ever told you that you were allowed to take a break. Nobody ever told me that I was allowed to take a break. So take a break. Do it. Take that break. You get to stop, you get to pause, you get to calm down. You get to stay indoors and wear some lame flower crown, dance around with a glass of wine to melodrama, wear nothing but an old SpongeBob SquarePants pajama. I know that it's hard to take a step back, but I did it anyway. Read a book, took an afternoon nap, and it was really okay. So now there are things I'm learning gently with age. Life is a novel, and there's a rare happiness in savoring every single page. I learned that my self-worth can be measured in smaller ways, that dragging the gas cylinder all the way to my flat is a talent, that I might just take time out of my busy schedule to focus on the more important things like cooking and laughing and journaling and maybe just existing. You see, time spent relaxing will never be time gone to waste. Even if I'm no longer headlights on the highway or glamorous nights in Bombay, I am still worthy. I don't need to hurry. So the world can keep its nasty popularity contests. You're skipping the rat race and taking a detour with me. We'll talk about the skill of being good at life, about nourishing friendships and remembering birthdays, about drawing boundaries and making your colleagues smile on Mondays. Because I know that you can paint and play the piano, even win a marathon. But tell me about your special gift of carrying groceries home. Tell me about your knack for taking care of stray dogs, calling your grandmother up, and being a good listener. And I will show you how good I am at loosening up, at halting once in a while so that I don't blow up. Because I'm not always the city that never sleeps, pacing backstage, prepping for a late night show. Some days, I'm the Himalayas, sipping black coffee and stargazing through a cabin window. Some days, I am immovable and slow. And yet, I'm stable and learning how to grow. So yeah, thanks.
I think it's something all of us need to do. But I want to ask you about this wonderful phenomenon of real interest, a revival of interest in poetry and in the spoken word, you know, which I think is lovely because I don't think we can have enough poetry in our lives. But talk a little about this. What is it that is attracting young people to poetry?
Oh, that's a very interesting question. Honestly, I think that we've just not been paying attention to poetry that's exciting to people. I think when a lot of readers hear the word poetry, you immediately think about old white men, right? You think about Shakespeare and you think about Wordsworth and you're like...
Or T.S. Eliot and The Wasteland and you need a glossary with it.
Yeah, and they're all wonderful. I'm sure they have their target audience. But when I was studying literature in college and university, I would read that and not really relate to it. I would wonder, okay, who is this written for? Not me. Not me. So where's my representation? Because I don't want to be holding a dictionary while reading poetry or any book, to be honest. And which is why then I started kind of, it wasn't just spoken word. I also started going back to a lot of, I started going back to my roots. So I started reading a lot of Malayalam and Tamil poetry. So a lot of the Sangam poets, even writers from Kerala, Vallathol, Cherushiri, and Eruthachan. There's so many beautiful poets from our country that don't really have exposure because we're still teaching these old white men in schools and colleges. I know that's changing. I know that we've been incorporating new work into the syllabus. Like my book Teething is now being taught in Kerala University. And that's poetry, right?
Wonderful.
That's poetry. And the poetry that I write is very simple. It's not, sometimes someone would look at it and think, okay, this is not poetry. You can say that. But I like how things are evolving now. I think the attraction towards poetry now is that we've made it simpler. A lot of people might say we've diluted it, but I don't feel that way about it. I think that by the end of the day, poetry should be accessible, just like all literature. If we want people to read, then we need to also think about writing to be read. It cannot be so niche that we forget about our target audience. I'm not saying we keep in mind our target audience, but I think there should be brevity, there should be simplicity. And now things are changing. People are, especially with spoken word, right? That's a very different format. You have poets putting their work out on YouTube, on Spotify, and I think there's something nice about that. I think that adapting to changing times is great.
Absolutely. May I ask you to recite another poem that you think people would like to listen to here?
Yeah, I would love to. Do we have time?
Yes, we do.
Okay.
That's just to tell us that we have just about 5 minutes to go to,
amazing.
so we have enough time.
This is not going to be that long then. Okay.
It's also from the poems to come down to?
Oh no, the previous one was,
Yeah.
but this was something I performed as part of a set for the new book. So I did like a performance tour last month in a few cities, and this is a very new poem, so I thought maybe I could just. So I wrote this poem for my grandfather, who was a very interesting person because he had his own principles in life, and they were really very inspiring. And now as an adult, going back to that, I feel like, okay, that's something I would like to live by as well. So yeah, this one's called Chocolate Garden. Games and mixed signals, ghosting and trauma bonding. Tell me you're too old for them, because I'm ancient, can't stand them. I've been growing into my house, roots and all. I've been flowering, even when it's winter and fall. I've been humming to the songs of the settled, and they only get better and better. Call me old soul, call me silly goose, call romanticism more fatal than the noose. But I was raised by my grandfather in his little village, and sweet talk was never the rage in that day and age. But he loved me. I swear he loved me. Because when I planted wrappers in his field, he watered them with me. And when I wasn't looking, he hung chocolates on every tree, cycled to the nearest city to buy pink shoes for me, sat with me while I studied for my test, switched the lights off when I slipped into rest. He didn't know much about science, because he'd only studied till the 9th. But when I asked him what the earth looked like from the moon, he gave me a blue marble and said it was shiny and cute and such a boon, as naughty and rare as little granddaughters. Every word he said, I bought it. Not once did he make me feel like a misfit. He even taught me to fold my failed answer sheet into a paper kite, not saying it was right, but hey, we did it anyway. And then he said, the night was just the sky with a black eye. Don't be afraid of the power cut. Don't cry. He used to weep for my bruised knees, even ate all my medicines with me just to keep me company. That's the man I had with me. So I knew a very special kind of love when I was a little girl. One I couldn't forget even when I grew into a woman. So don't tell me to temper my expectation. Receive affection with hesitation. Be okay with crumbs, because that's so dumb. I want wholesome, not lonesome. And sure, some in my generation might call it indecent to want something real and uncomplicated, but I'm absolutely uncool. And isn't that lovely? So call me and tell me that you love me. Yes, love that thing that everyone pretends to laugh at, but no shame in falling and none in staying. Say you don't want to kiss strangers anymore. Say you want to spend the rest of your life doing silly things like growing chocolate trees wherever you go. No more going with the flow or taking things slow. Catch those damn feelings and come over. French toast in the morning, no leftover. Hearts entangled, overexposure. You and me, loser and loser. What a joy to be uncool together.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you so much. Just the last question. What does the tattoo here? What is the tattoo here?
It's very random. Honestly, I got it when I was very young.
Well, what does it?
It says I'm born in every age to destroy evil and protect good.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
Thank
it was
you.
lovely, and I do hope that people look you up on Instagram, and they can see all your lovely poetry there as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kaveri.